Months after the divorce, she discovered that her ex-husband, who still held out hope of returning, was moving to France. Her heart was filled with expectation. But then she discovered a secret, and when she saw confirmation of the trip, her heart froze. Bridget Sullivan felt the weight of nearly 12 years of marriage like layers of clothing on a damp, chilly day. Initially comforting, but over time, suffocatingly heavy. She and Harold Bennett had built a life together, or so she told herself on nights when the silence between them was louder than any argument. Their home, with its 3 bedrooms and the constant aroma of fresh coffee Bridget insisted on brewing, was the stage for a play that had lost its original script. Only the actors remained, improvising lines that rarely connected. Love, she believed, wasn't a straight upward line, but a graph full of peaks and valleys. The problem was the valleys were growing longer and deeper, the peaks mere fleeting glimpses of a happiness that felt like it belonged to another life. They'd met young, brimming with the naive certainty that love could conquer any obstacle. For a while, it did. They weathered early financial struggles, Harold's long hours as he tried to establish himself as a construction foreman, and the nights Bridget, fresh out of business school, stayed up late studying for civil service exams that never panned out. Their children, Ethan and Lily, were the brightest lights in their journey. For them, Bridget reinvented herself. She set aside corporate ambitions to dive into the complex, fascinating world of raising 2 human beings. Their laughter gave her the strength to overlook Harold's increasingly frequent absences, as he spent more time with the guys or at work meetings that stretched into the early hours. The conflicts started subtly. First, veiled criticisms. "Don't you think you're getting a bit too comfortable, Bridget? You're home all day," he'd say, ignoring the invisible marathon of school runs, meals, laundry, homework, and running a household that, to him, seemed to function by magic. Then came open arguments, often about money. Harold had become successful, his small projects turning into bigger contracts, and with the money came an arrogance Bridget didn't recognize. He controlled their finances with an iron grip, making her feel like an employee justifying every expense, even for their children's needs. Yet amidst the chaos, there were moments, brief but powerful. One Sunday afternoon, as the kids played in the backyard, he wrapped his arms around her in the kitchen and whispered, "Remember when we had nothing but each other? That was good, wasn't it?" In that moment, the ice around Bridget's heart melted. This was the Harold she loved, the simple man who dreamed with her. These fragments of hope were why she fought, believing that beneath the layers of resentment and distance, the man she married was still there, waiting to be saved. She clung to those memories like a castaway to driftwood. She recalled whispered promises in the dark, plans to grow old together in a little house in Europe overlooking the sea. That dream, in particular, was the foundation of her hope. It was proof they still had a future to build. So she forgave his harsh words, ignored the lonely nights, and chose to believe it was just a phase, a long and painful crisis that, like others, would pass. Their love, she insisted to herself, was resilient. It had to be. She'd invested her youth, her dreams, her soul in this marriage. Giving up wasn't an option. It would mean admitting the life she'd chosen so fiercely was a miscalculation, an illusion. And at 38, Bridget Sullivan wasn't ready to face that truth. She'd keep waiting for the next peak, however brief, to reaffirm her faith that love could be salvaged. Months passed in a routine of tense silences and fragile truces, and when the crisis finally erupted, it wasn't a sudden thunderclap, but the inevitable result of a long, silent storm. Arguments became the air they breathed, dense and toxic. The breaking point came on a Friday night when Ethan, their eldest, with the brutal wisdom of children, asked at dinner, "Dad, why don't you smile at Mum anymore?" Harold didn't answer. He just stood, grabbed his car keys and left, slamming the door so hard the picture frames rattled. He returned the next morning, reeking of whiskey and cheap perfume. It was Bridget who suggested a separation. She avoided the word divorce, too final, like a death sentence for the dream she still held. She used break instead. "I think we need a break, Harold, to breathe, to miss each other. You've been so on edge. Last night, just because of Ethan's question, you stormed out. Deep down it was a desperate gamble. She believed distance would make Harold see what he was losing, that the emptiness of a rented apartment would make him value the warmth of their home. To her surprise, he agreed too quickly. If that's what you want, fine. No pleading, no attempt to dissuade her, just cold acceptance that left her throat tight. Harold rented a small studio in downtown Raleigh, a sterile grey place that, in Bridget's mind, would be the perfect purgatory for his regret. He continued covering all household expenses, which she took as a clear sign he wasn't ready to cut ties. It was his anchor, proof he still saw himself as part of their family. And so, the game began. A cruel game where only one player knew the rules. Harold's visits were calculated for maximum emotional impact. He didn't just come to pick up the kids. He'd show up late in the afternoon, claiming he needed to fix a leaky faucet or watch a game on the good TV. In those moments, he transformed. Gone was the distant, irritable husband. In his place was the man she'd fallen for. He looked her in the eyes when she spoke, laughed at her jokes, and sometimes let his hand linger on hers a second too long. One Tuesday evening, he arrived with a bouquet of daisies, her favorite. "Saw these at the florist and thought of you," he said with a shy smile. Bridget's heart raced. That night, they talked for hours on the couch like old times, about the kids, work, mundane things. When he stood to leave, he kissed her. A slow, lingering kiss. "You're looking prettier," he whispered before walking out, leaving her with the scent of daisies and the sweet poison of hope coursing through her veins. Each gesture was a spark reigniting the flame. Each kind word was a brick in rebuilding her dream castle. Bridget lived for those visits. She analyzed every text, every call, searching for hidden meanings, signs the break was working. She told her friends, eyes shining, "He's different, more affectionate. I think he's realizing." She didn't see the manipulation. She didn't notice Harold was keeping her on a low simmer, feeding her hope to ensure she wouldn't move on. He needed her there, a safety net, a captive audience for his ego. As long as Bridget waited, he was in control, free to live his double life without fear of losing her for good. For Bridget, the separation wasn't an end but a dramatic interlude before a happy ending. She clung to the belief it was only a matter of time before he showed up with his bags, saying, "I want to come home." She had no idea that while she dreamed of reconciliation, the reality unfolding out of her sight was far darker, leading her to a pain she never thought she could endure. Harold's game was flawless, and she, the key piece, moved exactly as he wanted, blinded by the hope he manufactured. His calculated visits and feigned affection found fertile ground in Bridget for one reason: the dream of moving to France. It wasn't just any plan. It was the mythology their marriage was built on, the promise of a future that justified any present suffering. It began on a chilly night early in their relationship, flipping through a travel magazine. A photo of Paris, with its golden lights reflecting on the Seine, captured their imaginations. "Imagine us there," Harold said casually, and the phrase became the cornerstone of a life they'd spend the next decade envisioning. France became their answer to everything. When work stress mounted, they'd say, "When we're in France, life will be different." It was their promised land, a refuge where the grind would give way to security and opportunity. They didn't dream of idleness, but of building something solid in a place that offered more. They believed they could work, maybe start a business, and give their kids a reality that felt increasingly out of reach in the US: quality public schools, safe streets, and easy access to other cultures. The dream solidified when their close friends, Mark and Emily, made the leap. They moved to Lyon, got married, had kids, and flooded social media with images of a serene life: picnics in pristine parks, weekend trips to historic villages, kids running happily along the Rhone. Each post from Emily stabbed Bridget with longing, not jealousy, but a preview of her own future. "Look, Harold," Emily posted pictures from a wine festival. "Their kids are growing so fast. Next year we'll be there with them," she'd say, and even in recent times Harold would nod, keeping the fantasy alive, perhaps as a convenience. For Bridget, moving to France was the logical climax of their story. It was the project that would give their strained marriage new purpose. Even during the separation, the dream didn't die. It grew stronger, the only explanation for Harold's behavior. In her mind, their crisis was the final hurdle. Reconciliation and France were intertwined. One couldn't happen without the other. It was the grand prize at the end of his redemption. Then, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, the sign she'd been waiting for arrived, not a visit or a call, but a text, cold and impersonal, yet earth-shattering. Her phone lit up with, "Harold." Her heart, as always, skipped a beat. "Bridget, I need to tell you something big. I'm applying for my visa and getting ready to move to France." She read it once, twice, 5 times. Each word pulsed with electricity. "I'm getting ready to move to France." Not thinking about it, but getting ready. It was real, concrete, the end of their purgatory. Her heart didn't just race, it erupted in a symphony of relief and euphoria. This was it. The grand gesture. He was finally acting on their dream. The break had worked better than she could have imagined. He wasn't just remorseful, he was taking the lead to make their deepest dream come true. It was the ultimate proof of love. Her mind raced, weaving a narrative that existed only in her longing. The affectionate visits, the flowers, the compliments, they weren't manipulation, they were the prelude. He was rebuilding their bridge before dropping the big news. France would seal their reconciliation. They wouldn't return to the same house, the same city heavy with painful memories. They'd start fresh as they'd always dreamed. She didn't reply right away, savoring the moment, letting the wave of joy wash over her. She looked out at the rain, but saw only the future. Her and Harold hand in hand showing the kids the Eiffel Tower, dinners with Mark and Emily, laughing and toasting to their fresh start. The separation, the pain, the loneliness, all seemed small, a fair price for that radiant future. She imagined their talk. He'd come over that night or the next, sit on the couch and say he missed her, that life without her and the kids was empty, and the only way to fix it was to chase their dream. "Let's go, Bridget, let's pack our bags." The anticipation was almost physical, a tingling in her hands, a lightness in her body. She spent the afternoon in a haze of happiness, mentally planning next steps. What documents would the kids need? Should they sell the furniture? She opened Emily's contact, itching to share the news but held back, wanting Harold's formal invitation, the perfect moment. That night she made his favorite dinner, unsure if he'd come. She tidied the house, lit a scented candle, dressed with care she hadn't shown in months. Each act was a ritual to welcome back her prodigal husband, her reclaimed future. Her heart, long frozen by uncertainty, burned with renewed hope. She just had to wait. The man she loved was finally coming home, even if that home was across the ocean. The night dragged on, quiet and heavy. Each passing car's headlights raised her hopes, only to fade into silence. The dinner grew cold. The candle burned out, its flame dying like her anticipation. Harold didn't show. He didn't call. The text, once a beacon of dawn, now loomed cryptic and cold. Waking on the couch the next morning, neck aching and heart heavy, a sliver of doubt pierced her optimism. Something was off. The magnitude of the news didn't match the silence that followed. A man planning to rebuild his family across continents doesn't vanish like this. It was a glitch in her perfect story. But, stubborn in her love, she silenced the doubt. "He's busy with preparations," she told herself. "It's a lot to handle. He'll reach out when it's solid." It was easier to believe than to face the possibility she'd misread everything. She needed normalcy, especially for the kids. She made breakfast, got them to school, and, to fill the void, went to the grocery store. She needed milk, bread, anything to distract from the anxious wait. In the canned goods aisle, comparing prices, fate ambushed her in the form of a familiar face. Tom, a longtime friend of both, one of the few who stayed neutral post-separation and had lived in Europe, aware of their dream. "Bridget, what a surprise. How you holding up?" he said, his smile kind but tinged with pity. Her heart leapt, sensing opportunity. Here was her chance to probe, to get the confirmation she craved. She flashed a radiant smile. "Tom, I'm great, actually. "You won't believe the new gown," she began, excitement bubbling. "I had to tell someone, and you're perfect. It's still a secret, though. I don't know all the details yet, but Harold texted me yesterday. He's moving to France. It's finally happening. I'm so happy." Tom's face changed instantly, his smile collapsing into discomfort. He looked away, rubbed his neck, and the silence between them spoke louder than words. "Oh, he told you?" he mumbled, barely audible. "Yeah, texted me yesterday. I'm just waiting for him to call so we can sort out our plans," she continued, her conviction wavering. The doubt she'd buried roared to life. Tom met her eyes, and in them Bridget saw the truth she'd refused to face. He sighed, like a man delivering terrible news. "Bridget, listen. I don't know what he said, but I don't think Harold's going alone, or with you guys." The words hung in the cold supermarket air. Not going alone or with you guys. Her mind froze. She laughed, a fragile, desperate sound. Tom shook his head, his gaze unflinching. "No, Bridget, he's not going with you." He paused, and her world held its breath for the final blow. "He's going with Jessica." Jessica. The name hit like a stone in her gut. Not just any name. Jessica was the reason. The late nights, the unfamiliar perfume, the fights, the coldness. A younger woman, a receptionist at one of Harold's construction firms. Bridget had always sensed her role in their unraveling, though Harold denied it with convincing indignation. "They've been together over a year, Bridget," Tom continued, his voice softer, cushioning the fall. "Since before you split. They've been planning France for months. They're starting over, together." Each word nailed shut the coffin of her dreams. France wasn't the prize of reconciliation. It was his escape with another woman. The text wasn't an invitation, but a formality for the woman he was leaving behind. The visits, the flowers, the compliments, they weren't love's prelude, but a smokescreen to keep her passive, waiting for a future that never existed. Harold's cruel game revealed its full viciousness. Bridget stood frozen, a can of tomato sauce in hand, her body cold. The supermarket's noise, announcements, cartwheels, chatter, faded into a sharp ringing in her ears. She wasn't going to France. She wasn't starting over. She was the past, discarded for a new future without her. Her heart, ablaze with hope the night before, didn't just cool, it froze. Bridget didn't recall getting home. She didn't remember putting away groceries or responding to the neighbor's good afternoon. The drive from the store was a blur, her body moving on autopilot. All she felt was cold, not from the store's AC, but from within, where her heart had turned to ice. For 2 days the house, once the stage of her dreams, became her cocoon of pain. Curtains stayed drawn, blocking sunlight that felt like an insult to her darkness. She ignored calls, texts from her mom and friends. The kids, thankfully, were with their grandparents, a coincidence she was grateful for. She couldn't fake normalcy for them. She merely existed, drifting between numb hours on the couch and silent, racking sobs on the bathroom floor, where the cold tiles were her only comfort. In that fog of grief, her phone buzzed. Harold. The message was cynicism perfected, manipulation so clear now it sickened her. "Hey babe, sorry for going MIA, swamped with paperwork. Plan is, I go first to set things up, find a place for us, then you guys come. Easier this way, miss you, kiss." Rage, pure and blazing, shattered her apathy. The pain gave way to a fury she didn't know she had. "Babe, a place for us?" His audacity was surreal. He wasn't just lying, he was insulting their history, her 12 years of devotion. Fingers trembling with anger. "Not weakness," she replied. "No please, no questions, just one line. I know everything, Harold. I know about Jessica. Take your disgusting lies and go to hell. And keep paying every bill, because if one's late, we're not talking. We're going to court." His response was instant. Missed calls, one after another, frantic texts, a flood of flimsy excuses and new lies. "It's not what you think. Jessica's just a friend helping me settle. I still love you and our family. It's just a phase. I'll come back." He tried to reel her back into his game, but the spell was broken. His words, once her hope's nectar, were now poison. Bridget didn't respond. She blocked his number, severing the last bridge. The day of his trip came. She knew the date from a text from Emily in France, mentioning when Mark would pick Harold up at the airport. That morning the doorbell rang. A deliveryman handed her a bouquet of daisies, her favorite, and a letter. One last theatrical gesture, a final attempt to keep the door ajar. She took the flowers, inhaled the scent that once made her dream, and without hesitation walked to the kitchen trash and tossed them in with the day's garbage. The letter she didn't open. She tore it into tiny pieces, letting them fall with the flowers. That night, after tucking the kids in, she allowed herself one final act of masochism. She opened Harold's social media. There it was, a photo of him and Jessica, smiling, arms around each other in airplane seats. The caption read, "Here we go, new life. Tour France awaits us." Seeing it hurt, but surprisingly, the pain didn't paralyze her. It was like an electric shock to her heart. Something shifted. The Bridget who wept on the bathroom floor died. The woman waiting for a miracle vanished. She went to the kids' room, watching Ethan and Lily sleep, their breaths calm, their lives peaceful. They were her life. The real one, not the fantasy she'd chased. She loved herself, her strength in raising those two. They didn't deserve a mother dragging herself through life like a victim. They deserved a mother who modeled resilience and power. In the quiet of that night, lit only by a dim lamp, Bridget made a vow, not of revenge, but of rebirth. She wouldn't sink into bitterness. She wouldn't give Harold the satisfaction of seeing her broken. Instead of mourning the life she lost, she'd build one so spectacular it would make the old one a mere draft. She'd shine, not for him, but for herself. And in doing so, she'd show him, the universe, and most importantly herself, the magnitude of the woman he'd foolishly discarded. The morning was over. The rebuilding was about to begin. The vow made in the night silence wasn't fleeting emotion, it was the foundation of a new identity. The next morning, Bridget woke, changed. The air in the house felt lighter, the colors sharper. The pain lingered, a smoldering ember, but something stronger had emerged. Purpose. She didn't know exactly how she'd rebuild, but she knew why, for herself and her kids. Her first step was reclaiming a buried part of herself. Before being Harold's wife or Ethan and Lily's mom, who was Bridget? A memory surfaced, her love for transforming spaces. She'd spend hours rearranging furniture, devouring design magazines, finding joy in blending colors and textures. It was a hobby, dismissed by Harold as frivolous. Now it would be her weapon. With a resolve that surprised her, she scoured the internet and enrolled in an intensive interior design course that same afternoon. It was a steep investment, but she saw it as the first brick in her new future. Classes were at night, fitting around the kids' schedule. For the first time in years, she was doing something solely for herself. Each lesson, color theory, lighting, furniture history, was like opening a window in a long-sealed room. She wasn't the youngest or wealthiest student, but she was the hungriest. While others saw the course as a career path, Bridget saw it as her lifeline. She soaked up every detail, asked questions, stayed late to talk with professors. Her pain, instead of paralyzing her, fueled a fierce focus. Suffering became her drive. Before finishing the course, she started job hunting, knowing she needed experience. She built a simple portfolio with class projects and knocked on doors of small design and architecture firms in Raleigh. She faced rejections, skeptical looks at the nearly 40-year-old starting over. But she didn't falter. Each closed door strengthened her resolve. Finally, a small local firm run by an architect named Claire gave her a shot. The job was as an assistant, fetching coffee, organizing fabric samples, taking measurements, work others might see as a step back. Bridget seized it like the opportunity of a lifetime. She didn't slack. She arrived first, left last. While other assistants did their tasks and left, Bridget stayed, watching Claire, learning 3D modeling software, studying old projects. She didn't have a goal, she had a mission. On weekends, with the kids at their grandparents', she didn't rest. She worked on course projects, even took on extra office tasks, presenting solutions no one asked for, but that consistently impressed Claire. Her talent and relentless dedication were undeniable. Claire began giving her small responsibilities, picking a color palette for a powder room, suggesting a layout for a child's bedroom. Bridget treated each task like a palace design. Her knack for understanding clients' desires and transforming spaces with creative, budget-conscious solutions started turning heads. The breakthrough came in under 6 months. The firm landed a major, challenging project, a full renovation of a penthouse apartment for a demanding, high-profile client. Claire was swamped, and the project risked delays. One night, seeing her boss's stress, Bridget, who knew every detail from organizing the materials, presented a complete concept sketch with a bold design and detailed timeline she'd crafted in her spare time. Claire studied the plans in silence, then looked at Bridget, not as an assistant but as a peer. "This is brilliant," she said. "I couldn't have done better. The project's yours. You're leading it." Bridget's heart raced, not with anxiety, but with triumph. She'd done it, not by luck or favor, but by merit. The woman discarded and left behind was now in charge, ready to make her mark on a high-stakes project. The rebuilding wasn't just a promise, it was a reality taking shape, and she knew Harold would eventually hear of her success and, at the very least, regret his choices. Deep down, she awaited that day. Leading the penthouse project was Bridget's trial by fire. She dove in with the intensity of someone fighting for their life. Every choice, from door handles to curtain fabrics, was executed with precision and taste, bordering on perfection. That project became the cornerstone of her empire. Bridget Sullivan's name began circulating in Raleigh's elite circles. With gratitude and the earnings from the penthouse and smaller projects that followed, she made her boldest move, opening her own studio. Bridget Sullivan Designs started humbly, a small rented office, a powerful computer, and immense ambition. But her reputation preceded her. What began with luxury residential projects soon grew. One day a hotel conglomerate called. They'd seen the penthouse, featured in a national architecture magazine, and wanted her to pitch for the presidential suite of a new boutique hotel in Miami. Bridget knew this was her shot at a bigger league. She spent 2 sleepless weeks researching, designing, creating a concept that wasn't just luxurious, but told Miami's story through design, materials, and art. She didn't pitch a proposal, she pitched an experience. She won the contract. The suite's success was massive, opening every door. The conglomerate, impressed, handed her the interior design for an entire resort they were building in the Florida Keys. It was a multi-million-dollar contract, a monumental challenge that forced her to build a team, travel constantly, and negotiate with global suppliers. Bridget proved not just a talented designer, but a savvy entrepreneur and inspiring leader. Her work became her signature, a warm sophistication, balancing grandeur and intimacy. Seeing her name in an international publication was surreal. She remembered the woman crying on the bathroom floor, feeling invisible. Now, her vision was celebrated globally. With global recognition came invitations. She became a sought-after figure at design fairs in Milan, lectures in New York, architecture events in Paris. Travel became routine. She hopped planes like buses. She planned her life so her absences didn't disrupt the kids, bringing them along during school breaks, showing them the world she now helped shape. Of Harold, she knew nothing. The day he left, she cut him off completely. Social media, phone, messaging apps. He was erased from her digital and emotional life. For the kids, he called their phones at set times. Financial matters went through third parties. In his first months in France, he missed pension payments, testing her limits. Bridget didn't hesitate. She hired a lawyer who settled it with one formal notice. From then, all money matters went through the lawyer. Harold was a bureaucratic ghost in her life. On a trip, waiting in a first-class lounge in Chicago's O'Hare Airport, she thought of him, not with anger or pain, but with clinical detachment. She recalled their shared dream of Europe. The irony was overwhelming. He'd gone to France for a new life, while she, the woman he left, had conquered the world. She didn't need to move to Europe for a European life. Europe came to her. Her professional turnaround wasn't a turnaround anymore. It was a new existence, built from her old self's ruins. Months passed. Months in which Bridget built an empire from the ashes of a torched life. The trip to Lisbon this time wasn't a distant dream but a professional obligation. She was invited as the keynote speaker at Europe's top design conference, a recognition placing her among the industry's giants. It was her career's peak, proof of her resurrection. While there, she decided to revisit the past. She called Mark and Emily. Their friendship had faded, a casualty of the painful split, but the warmth remained. Emily answered with surprised joy, insisting Bridget come for dinner at their home in Lyon. At their impeccable home, Bridget was greeted with warm hugs. The house was just as she'd imagined from photos that once fueled her dreams. But now she felt no longing, only calm appreciation. Her reality surpassed that old fantasy. After dinner, the conversation inevitably turned to the unspoken topic. Emily broached it gently. "We hardly see him anymore, you know," she said of Harold. "He pulled away from everyone after things fell apart." Bridget kept a neutral expression, mildly curious. "And how did things fall apart?" Mark sighed, glancing at his wife. "Bridget, life here isn't the fairy tale people paint. Their golden dream fizzled fast." Jessica was young, vibrant, but couldn't handle reality. They thought jobs would fall into their laps. She worked as a hotel maid, then a waitress. Lasted 3 months, complained about everything. The cold, the hard work, the lack of glamour. One day she packed up and left. Went back to her parents in the US, that was a while ago. Bridget absorbed the news without visible emotion. It brought no joy or satisfaction, just the predictable end to an illusion-based story. "And Harold?" she asked, her voice steady. "Oh, Harold," Mark said with pity. "He took it hard. Without her and with money tight, he's been scraping by. His work visa took longer than expected. He couldn't work as a foreman. Too much red tape. He takes what comes, day work as a laborer on small sites, some nights as a waiter in a local bistro. Keeps saying he'll save up and go back to the US. The image clashed with the arrogant, controlling man she'd known. Harold, who once ruled their finances, now counted coins to survive. The night ended, and Bridget said goodbye. Walking through Lyon's quiet, elegant streets to her rented car, a sleek black Mercedes she'd chosen for pure pleasure, she felt the cool Atlantic breeze. The conversation was revealing, but she felt oddly empty, like watching the final chapter of someone else's story. She unlocked the car, its interior lights glowing on soft leather. As she opened the driver's door, hurried footsteps sounded behind her. A voice she hadn't heard in years, but which her body recognized with a shiver, called out, "Bridget?" She turned slowly. There, under a street lamp's yellow glow, was Harold. But it was a worn version, thinner, shoulders slumped with exhaustion. He wore a waiter's uniform, stained and wrinkled. His hair was thinner, his once confident face etched with defeat she couldn't imagine. His eyes, meeting hers, widened in shock, shame, and something like panic. He saw a spectre, a woman in a designer coat, radiating success, about to step into a car worth more than his entire existence. The long-delayed encounter had arrived, and the silence between them on that quiet Lyon street was heavier than any words they could speak. The silence was a chasm, filled only by the breeze and the ghosts of their 12 years. Harold stared, his eyes tracing her expensive coat, her perfect hair, her commanding presence. He saw her success, and in his eyes, Bridget saw the reflection of all he'd lost. He broke the silence, his voice hoarse, almost a whisper. "Bridget, it's really you. What are you doing here?" "Work," she said, the words simple but loaded with meaning only they could grasp. I didn't know," he stammered, his discomfort plain. "You look different. Amazing." He took a hesitant step forward. "I miss you, Bridget. I miss everything." Those words, once earth-shaking, now reached her as a faint echo. The anger, pain, and desire for revenge had dissolved, replaced by something stronger. Peace. Bridget smiled, not with arrogance or scorn, but with serene clarity, the smile of someone who'd crossed hell and learned to love the view on the other side. "I'm good, Harold. Really good," she said, her voice calm and firm. "For a long time, I thought my life ended the day you left. But I looked at our kids and realized the love I have for them, and the love I needed for myself was bigger than any pain. It was for them and for me that I got back up. She met his eyes, not with blame, but with the clarity of truth. Life teaches hard lessons. Mine was learning to stand alone. Maybe yours is learning to do the same. Think of your kids. Think of yourself. We should never trade what's permanent and true for an illusion we know is fleeting. Time doesn't forgive those choices. The lesson was delivered with the grace of fact, not the weight of vengeance. He seemed to shrink under its truth. Bridget opened her designer bag with a fluid, deliberate motion. From it she pulled a white envelope, folded and handed it to him. "I have an early flight," she said. "This is for you." He took the envelope, his calloused fingers brushing hers for a fleeting moment, their last contact. Without another word, Bridget turned, slid into the Mercedes, and closed the door with a soft thud. The engine purred to life. As she drove into the night, Harold stood alone under the street lamp. He stared at the envelope, his hands shaking. He opened it. No money, no legal papers, just a sheet of notebook paper with two distinct handwritings, one rounded, one angular. A letter from his children. "Dad, Mom said she was going to France and we wanted to say hi. Things are good here. Ethan got an A in math and I, Lily, won the school art contest. Mum framed my drawing in her office. She works a lot, but she smiles more now. She took us to see snow last vacation. It was the best. We miss you. Mum says you're our dad and we should love you. She says you're building your life there and we should root for you. Hope you're okay. Take care. Love and tons of misses, Lily and Ethan." The tears Harold held back in front of Bridget now fell freely, staining the paper. Each innocent word cut his soul. Her nobility in fostering their love for him, the happy life they were building, her success, the smile he'd once extinguished, it all shone through their words. On that cold sidewalk, holding proof of the love he'd abandoned, Harold understood. He hadn't just traded a woman, he'd traded a partnership, a family, a lifetime of smiles and framed drawings. He'd swapped a brilliant future for a fleeting illusion that crumbled, leaving him alone with the crushing weight of what could have been. Folding the letter with reverence, something shifted in him. Bridget's message and his children's love weren't a final sentence but permission to start over. He looked at his calloused hands not with shame, but as symbols of his struggle. He'd learned from his mistakes the hardest way. If Bridget could rise from ashes, so could he, not to win her back, but to become a man worthy of his children's love. That night, Harold decided, he'd love himself, forgive himself, and fight to be in their lives however he could. There was still time to correct his course, to be the father they wrote about with such care. The past couldn't change, but the future, for the first time in years, held a glimmer of hope. Bridget's journey proves that even when our world collapses, we have the power to build a new one, stronger and more beautiful. She turned tears into a foundation and pain into determination. Now, we want to hear your thoughts. Rate this story and Bridget's courage from 0 to 10 in the comments. We can't wait to read what you think. And to catch more gripping stories like this, hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell to keep supporting our work. Your engagement keeps us going. Big hug and see you in the next video.